Welcome to Study Session 7, Historical Precursor to the International State System 2, the Political Empire 4, Indian Empire. Introduction. In this study session, you will learn about India state system. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Outline the boundaries of ancient Indian system. 2. Highlight the brief history of ancient India. 3. Discuss the main characteristics of political units of ancient India. 4. Identify the political and system structure of ancient Indian Empire. 5. Discuss the forms of interaction among the component units. 6. Identify the system regulator and institutions of conflict resolution in India state system. Boundaries of ancient Indian system. The Gupta Empire was an ancient Indian empire founded by Maharaja Srigupta, which existed from approximately 320 to 550 CE and covered much of the Indian subcontinent. The Indian subcontinent is a southerly region of Asia, mostly situated on the Indian plate and projecting southwards into the Indian Ocean. Definitions of the extent of the Indian subcontinent differ, but it usually includes the core lands of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. The empire of the Mauryas was founded in 322 BC by King Chandragupta Maurya, who initially conquered Magadha by dethroning the Nahada ruler Dana Nahada. He then invaded and annexed most of central India and western India. With the fall of Alexander the Great's empire, the local rulers could offer Chandragupta Maurya little resistance. Chandragupta's son Binduswara and grandson Asoka continued the policy of imperial expansion until the Maurya Empire covered over 3 million square miles. All the land between eastern Iran and the Himalayan states of Assam was under Mauryan dominion. North to south, the kingdom stretched from beyond Kashmir to part of Tamil Nadu, one of the mightiest empires of the time. The region within which this system operated was separated from its neighbors by deserts, seas, and the Himalayas. Phases of Indian civilization. Indus Valley civilization can be divided into 3 phases: the earthly food gathering era, integration era, and the localization era, with the arrival of Aryans 100 BCE. Early food gathering era started from 600 and 300 BCE and lasted till 2600 BCE. During this era, the civilization consisted of small groups of hunter, gatherers, and early village farming communities. The integration era started with the incorporation of all the cultures and clans into a single terrain dominated by the relative similarity of cultural traits. The integration era was interrupted with the arrival of Aryans around 2000 BCE. The Aryans adopted conflict-riding symbiosis with the local population. This was an uncomfortable and hostile relationship between Aryans and the local population and ended with the complete dominance of Aryans. This age can be defined as the localization age. This age ended with the triumph of Aryans over the local population and the Vedic started. During the early Vedic period, due to changes in environments, Aryans migrated to Gangetic Valley and permanently settled there. Characteristics of political units of ancient India from kingdom to empire. About 1500 BC, after the Aryans invasion, all of the people in India seemed to have been divided up into castes. We know this from the Rig Veda. Only men from the highest caste, the Brahmins, could be rulers in the government or even ministers or clerks in the government. These men did not allow women to rule either. Most of India continued to be divided into small kingdoms, each with their own king. Beginning in the 300s BC, however, some of these kings began to form larger empires in India, especially in the north. During the 300s BC, Chandragupta conquered a lot of northern India and made it into one big empire. The Mauryan Empire lasted until about 200 BC, but then the small kingdoms of India regained their independence. The same thing happened again in 319 AD when Chandragupta II formed the Gupta Empire, and then in 455 the Gupta Empire also collapsed. Then in the 1100s AD, the Abbasids invaded and made northern India part of the Islamic Empire. So during the medieval period, India went back and forth between being ruled by small kings and being ruled by larger empires. Political system structure of ancient Indian Empire, with the Mauryan and Gupta empires, and in the Chola kingdom, the kings appointed a lot of administrators to help them govern. In the beginning of the Vedic age, people did not have a settled life and were nomads, but with development in agriculture, people started to settle down in groups. The organization was mainly tribal, and the head of the tribe was supposed to be the Raja or the king, though the concept of king had yet not developed. With the passage of time, large kingdoms started to grow, and by the 6th century BC, there were 16 Majanapadas kingdoms. There were many small republics also in ancient India. These republics had some element of democracy in their administration. The king, that is Raja, was the supreme head of the legislative, executive, and judiciary branches. He was assisted in administration by a number of officials. The member of the council of ministers could give advice to the king, but final decisions were left to the king. The ministers and other officials were directly appointed by the king. Forms of interaction among component units of ancient India: diplomatic contact, trade, types of rivalries, and organized violence or warfare. Ancient India was home to an equally sophisticated but very different diplomatic tradition. India had very little political connection to the affairs of other regions of the world until Alexander the Great conquered its northern region in 326 BC. The subsequent establishment of the native Mauryan Empire ushered in a new era in Indian diplomatic history that was marked by efforts to extend both Indian religious doctrine and political influence beyond South Asia. The Mauryan Emperor Ashoka was particularly active, receiving several emissaries from the Macedonian ruled kingdoms and dispatching numerous Brahmins-led missions of his own to West, Central, and Southeast Asia. Such contact continued for centuries until the ascendancy of the Repute kingdoms, that is 8th to the 13th century AD, again isolated northern India from the rest of the world. Outside the Chola dynasty and other Dravidian kingdoms of South India, which continued diplomatic and cultural exchanges with Southeast Asia and China and preserved the extent and memories of the Arthashastra. India's distinctive mode of diplomatic reasoning and early traditions were forgotten and replaced by those of its Muslim and British conquerors. Yes, during the integration era, Iran's emergence, also referred to as the localization era, triumphed. System regulator and institutions of conflict resolution. The ruthlessly realistic states system codified in the Arthashastra insisted that foreign relations being determined by self-interest rather than ethnical considerations. It graded state power with respect to 5 factors and emphasized espionage, diplomatic maneuver, and contention by 12 categories of states within a complex geopolitical matrix. It also posted 4 expedients of statecraft, that is, conciliation, seduction, subversion, and coercion, and 6 forms of state policy, that is, peace, war, non-alignment, alliances, shows of force, and double dealing. Study session summary. In this study session, you learned about the India state system. The main characteristic of ancient India state system was a movement from kingdom to empire. This is the end of study session 7. Thank you for listening.